Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to We Ain't Got No History's Post-Match Live. My name is David, and I will be here as soon as I mute this tab. I will be here for about an hour, where we will talk about how the sky is not falling, or possibly is falling. You never know these days. We'll be talking about Chelsea's first game of the 2017-18 Premier League season, which went not according to script, let's say that way. Just about everything that could have gone wrong so far has gone wrong. Chuck first one on this time instead of second half substitute. Here from the start, just like Jeremy Boga. Hopefully he lasts longer than 16 minutes. Which, not Boga's fault. In a way, kind of reminded me of Josh McEachran's first start. I think it was under AVB when he lasted about 20 minutes before a red card forced an early substitution. Which is exactly what happened today with Gary Cahill getting sent off in the 14th minute. Thanks to, let's say a harsh red card from Craig Pawson. Perhaps it wasn't harsh at the time, but considering some of the decisions he made later on, I think we can safely say that it was a harsh red, considering he gave a yellow for a pretty similar challenge from Ben Mee in the second half, and then he gave another yellow for an even possibly worse challenge from Scott Arfield, was it, who put his studs right into Alonso's knee. And so old Craig Pawson, and just to sum up the referee's day, the yellow card he gave to Rudiger towards the end of the game for a supposed foul on whoever it was for Burnley that gave him a free kick just outside the area was rather ridiculous. I think Brady hit the post from that, which would have been harsh to lose 4-2 at that point. But anyway, those who are asking how long the suspensions are for, Cahill is a direct red for supposedly violent conduct. So if we don't appeal, which I assume we're going to appeal it because it is borderline at best. If you don't appeal it, it's 3 games right now. It's a direct red for violence, so that's 3 games. Fabregas is 1 game, and we cannot appeal it because it is 2 yellows. So that's actually probably slightly more unfortunate because, A, we don't have another midfielder, and B, we're playing Spurs next. So it's going to be interesting to see who plays with Conte in midfield against Spurs. Is it going to be David Luiz stepping up? Are we going to sign somebody in the meantime? Maybe old Danny Drinkwater, who knows? But as bad as the first half was after Cahill's red, which you kind of were hoping it was not going to happen when he took off on that stupid run up the left side of the pitch. It always fills you with dread. Cahill has good technique when it comes to shooting or whatever, but his touches, his passing, and his dribbling clearly needs a lot of work. And you just was kind of hoping that he would pass the ball, but he didn't. Then he just kept going, and sure enough, he overran the ball, or whatever is what people call it. He took a long touch, and then did that classic where you lunge for it with your to try to win it back. The other team already has won it, and from the referee's angle, I can see how it was studs first or whatever. But replays, I don't think replays are not that conclusive. I don't think he actually made contact with studs at all, and if he made contact with anything, it was his calf. He completely overran everything. And also just in the speed of play, it really was not anything I would term dangerous. And obviously, if you read the letter of the law or whatever, it's probably a red card. But in the spirit of the law, it wasn't like reckless in the sense that he was endangering somebody's knees or whatever. I don't know. It's again in isolation, I can see why it was a red card. Considering the referee's other decisions, it was certainly a harsh red card. Or the other ones were easy yellows. But either way, it was in the context of the game, it was poor refereeing. So after Cahill got sent off, the plan was to play a 3-4-2 instead of, say, a 4-4-2 or 4. So Conte brought on Christensen to restore the three-man defense. Chuck says, I hate Pawson, but he's a new filled out. But Cahill's studs were up. Yeah, well, again, by the letter of the law, yeah, I see why it was red. I maintain that in the context of the game and in the context of the play and how fast the speed of the play really, to me, I could see, I don't know, orange card, right? Let's bring in the orange card. But we can be mad at Pawson, I suppose, but Chelsea's reaction to that red card was probably not ideal. That first half display is just way too much disorganization in defense. Conte brought on Christensen to then deputize on. I think he actually switched them around. So Christensen played right side, David Luiz played the middle, and then Rudiger was on the left. So we defense with the two wing backs, keeping the two midfielders, and then just going with two up front. Perhaps another way to go about it would have been to take, go switch to a 4-man defense and play like a 4-4-3-2 or a 4-4-1. And it's just, I don't know if it was the nature of how early it was, or maybe how nobody was really expecting it, other than the Burnley players who were quick to try to surround the referee. Just one more thing on the refereeing, like if you're the referee and you're just pulling that red card out without like even thinking about it, like I'm not so sure you should be refereeing on instinct, or like the emotion of that moment. Like take a moment, compose yourself, think about what you're doing. Is not very, very, very poor refereeing, I thought. But again, our reaction to it was not ideal either. The first half, Chelsea were all over the place in defense, especially. Completely botched marking job on for both the first and the third goals. The first goal, David Luiz doesn't put pressure on Sam Vokes. Vokes mishits his shot, but gets lucky with it. Courtois, suddenly his feet in quicksand, doesn't dive fast enough, and there's your first goal. The second goal is a bit of a worldie from Liam Brady, who possibly, the cliche goes, he'll never hit another one as good in his life. So that was a really nice goal. That was unlucky. There's not much you can do about it. Probably close him down, but again, we were down to 10 men at that point, so it's kind of harsh to pick on closing down and stuff like that. And then the third goal was a completely botched marking job again on a free kick, and I haven't seen too many replays yet, but I would put it on Rudiger for now. But defending and all that is a collective effort. Sorry, Ward. That's right. Not Brady. Brady, I could see. Yeah, when I was saying it, it didn't seem quite right. Brady's got quality. Stephen Ward, well, less so. So all that was not ideal. Down 3-0 at halftime. We've been here before. I think last time was Arsenal. The reaction to that was pretty classic, although not within the context of that game. But Chelsea's reaction after halftime was quite positive, I thought. Obviously, we still lost the game, and it's still 3 points thrown away. But there's obvious comparisons that are already being made, and were even before the game, to the 2015-16 season, which imploded basically from day one. And the second half response to today's game is what gives me hope that actually this season will not end up, at least not as bad as the 2015-16 season. Chelsea's fight was palpable, to use our favorite word. The spirit in the squad is quite great. Obviously this should have happened a little earlier in the game. Maybe if we're not 3-0 down, we can actually bring it back and get a point or three out of it. But down 3-0, down a man at halftime, whatever was said in the dressing room did the trick, because Chelsea basically dominated the entire second half, and even when we went down to 9 men, we still scored. So if you're looking for something positive, I mean, there you go. 45 minutes of pure effort and hustle and desire. You can see how much it took out of players. There's like David Luiz was lying on the ground, just absolutely disappointed that we couldn't bring it back to 3-3. And there was even an offside goal that was chalked off from Morata that he possibly didn't need to touch. Possibly he did. I only saw one replay, and it was kind of inconclusive whether Christensen's shot / cross was spinning wide, or was it gonna ping off the far post. But Morata was there, and he's a striker, so obviously he's going to go for it. He took a touch, and he was slightly offside. So that's unfortunate. That would have been his second goal of the game, actually. He came on in the 58th minute, and I think pretty conclusively won the striker war, if there ever was a striker war, between him and Batshuayi as to who should be starting for us. Conte was talking before the game how Morata needs to come up to speed with our system, and get his fitness completely in order, learn how to play with everybody else. And 58 minutes from Michi versus 32 minutes from Morata, I think it's pretty obvious that we should be playing with Morata from the very beginning. I like the fact that we gave Batshuayi the start. He had a very good end of the last season, and he had a good preseason, but that's a couple bad games in a row now for him. Or at least this one, he's okay in the Community Shield, but he was absolutely anonymous today. And not even just anonymous, just bad touches, bad passes. I can recall one good play from Batshuayi that was a little hold up and then a pass out to the right to Azpilicueta. But several bad touches, missed headers, mistimed jumps, things that he needs to not struggle with anymore. He's had a year to learn the system, so that's fine. But whatever was happening today was not really working out for him. So definitely want to see Morata starting from now on, even if he's not 100% compatible with the system yet. He literally changed the game today, scoring the one goal and making an impact, and really making occupying 2-3 defenders at the same time, kind of like in the classic Drogba Costa style, even without the the requisite supposedly snarl and all that. So Fabregas is one game, and it's not appealable, to answer that question, which is probably the biggest concern right now heading into Spurs, because we don't have another midfielder. Cahill missed a game, whatever. We have Rudiger to deputize, or even Christensen. They both did all right, I suppose, especially second half. But Moses will be back for Spurs, so he's back on the wing. Alonso started poorly with the early yellow, and that kind of affected him a little later. You could see him pulling out of challenges, which he normally would probably fight for, but he got unlucky a couple of times with a couple nice shots, and played pretty well, motoring up that left side of the pitch and winning possession a couple of key times. So Alonso, Moses back on the wings, but Conte, he counts for two, so that's fine, but he still needs somebody to play next to him. And if we don't sign somebody in the meantime, I'd say the obvious, if there is even an obvious solution, is to move David Luiz into midfield. We saw him play that before for Chelsea. We saw him play that for Brazil not that long ago. In fact, back in June. As others are saying, Christensen can also play midfield, and he had done that in Germany while he was on loan there. So it's not going to be an ideal solution. But if we recall, Luiz was pretty decent in a midfield destroyer type of role, and he has Fabregas's passing, if not necessarily his vision, as consistently. So it's possibly not the worst thing. And as we recall from playing Spurs, our midfield tends to get dominated against them a couple times now in terms of physicalities. When they play somebody like Wanyama or Dembele, they are bigger and stronger than most of our players. So having somebody like David Luiz in midfield might actually be a benefit, certainly over somebody like Fabregas. We should also recall that we beat Spurs with a B team last time we played them at Wembley. So if we're looking for things to draw on, positives to draw on, good omens to look at. If we can solve the midfield issue for Fabregas and find an adequate replacement for, say, David Luiz in midfield, if he does move up, then we should be fine. I'm assuming Pedro will be back. I haven't really heard if how bad his ankle injury is, considering we didn't really hear about it until just before the game. I'd say it's probably not that concerning. So Pedro, Willian, and Morata should be able to start. That's my guess. Nilay says, guess Musonda will start in midfield. That could be interesting as well. Certainly, both Boga and Musonda do have some priors with playing central midfield. And that's certainly a possibility, but I would be worried. I would definitely be worried about the physical aspect of the play in that sense. But you never know. Yeah. I think certainly I've seen Musonda play central midfield, which is surprising considering he looks about 12 and has the body of a 9-year-old. But maybe they'll fight in the shadows or whatever, and just run around the big boys in Spurs midfield. So that could be will Moses be back? Yes, Moses will be back. He was only suspended for this one game, so Azpilicueta can go back to playing the position that he knows best and he's best at. Because nothing he did today convinced me that he's an adequate replacement for Moses. Certainly in terms of an attacking sense, he can play defense anywhere he plays. But recall Loftus-Cheek for Spurs match. Yeah, right. I think Loftus-Cheek didn't even play midfield for Palace today. He continues to be deployed as a wide forward for whatever reason. Apparently, that's his lot in life. And we just sent Baker on loan, so good old Kyle Scott, I believe, is the next actual midfielder as far as the depth chart is concerned. Recall the loan army. Do you think Morata should start the next game? Yes, I definitely think Morata has passed his audition with flying colors. He scored on his debut, so hopefully we can stop any sort of Torres comparisons right there. Spanish striker, record signing, Italian manager, club already in crisis. But Morata scored on his debut, so we're good to go there. When will Hazard and Bakayoko will be back? Who knows? I think Bakayoko is at least a few weeks away, and Hazard at least a month, if not more, unfortunately. Hazard, I think originally Hazard was supposed to be out for 3 months, and that was at the start of June. So June, July, August. plus recovery from there. Optimistically, he possibly could be back after the first international break, which is the first 2 weeks of September. But I'd say I would not be surprised if it actually was after the October international break or at the start of October. So it's we're gonna have to continue to learn how to deal with the absence of Hazard, and the plan for that cannot be just to give the ball to Willian and then hope that he does something, or he just stands on the ball and waits for everybody to gather around and then pass it back. So we need obviously Pedro's injury is unfortunate. The red card, super unfortunate. I mean, it's not like the first 15 minutes is not like Burnley even really had a kick at the ball, and then they only scored because of a couple of defensive mix-ups. So that's football for you. Everything just kind of snowballs from one decision to another. So we need to find that creativity with a Hazard, and actually that's kind of where Morata made a huge difference too, because he gave us somebody up top who we could actually use. Unfortunately for old Michi, he's not really able to contribute that much, even when we had the ball. So it's work to be done there. Realistically, who do you think will be our next signing? Well, realistically, I'd say Danny Drinkwater would be our next signing, but as it turns out, we bid 15 million for him, which sounds reasonable to us, but when Leicester City, even the rumors put the price at 30 to 40 million, it's a bit questionable as to what we're doing with 15 million bids for people who are quite obviously aren't going to be sold for 15 million. I mean, surely we have better things to do with our time, and they have better things to do with their time than somebody coming over and lowballing you with a 15 million offer for your starting midfielder in the Premier League. There is a recent rumor just from a couple hours ago, actually, from the Telegraph that said that Chelsea will be making a second bid now. So apparently we made this 15 million bid a few weeks ago. It doesn't say exactly how much, but how long, but a few weeks ago. And then Leicester City just laughed it off, and then now we've just been doing nothing. But now we're going to go back and try to bid for Drinkwater again, which is fine. As a fourth midfielder, of course, right now he needs to be a second midfielder. So, Conte and Drinkwater once won a Premier League title, so that could be a plus. But as Richard points out, Drinkwater is injured, which doesn't help with the Spurs game at all. Even if we consider that Conte would play him from the start, which is not at all obvious, because Conte likes to bring in players and acclimatize them and get them indoctrinated into the system before ever playing them. Yeah, Bakayoko not fit for a couple more weeks is my understanding, and that's possibly idealistic. I don't think he's actually training with the first team yet. So yeah, that is quite unfortunate. Do you think we have a shot at signing Chamberlain? Yeah, I hope so, but I'm not entirely confident of being able to sign anybody from Arsenal or Spurs. So yeah, I think Oxlade-Chamberlain would require a pretty serious bid, and would require him to push for a move. And that seems to be a pretty common thread these days, with no team really forced to sell. It's up to the players really to push for it. We need Gareth Bale. I don't think Gareth Bale would be helping in the situation at the moment. Need a midfielder is the biggest concern. How about Boga to play midfield? Also a possibility. I think he has the physicality more so than Musonda, but I'm not so sure Conte would be ready to trust either of those guys in the midfield. He might not have a choice, but I think we'll have there's a better chance of one of the defenders stepping up in the midfield and playing alongside Conte, and we just kind of sacrifice any sort of forward passing creativity, and then try to win it with the forwards and the wingers, which is fine. I mean, it's the 3-4-3 is built on creativity and attack on the wings. It's not necessarily built on creativity through the middle. We're only really playing Fabregas because from the start, that is, because everybody else is injured or not available. Last year's central starting mid partnership of Conte and Matic isn't exactly what you would consider, the fulcrum of creativity there. So, yeah, I would think I think David Luiz and Conte is your odds-on favorite for starting midfield against Spurs. Which oddly I'm fine with it. I'm much more concerned about how the defense shapes up if David Luiz steps out of it. Obviously today there were some issues there, even though he was there playing with two new partners. So that's always a possibility to create issues. With Rudiger and Christensen back there. Paul says, I'm supporting since 1967, saw young kids crying today. Aw. Well, it's how men are made, right? Men and women. I shouldn't be crying, it's only the first game. It's I think it's pretty easy to get negative, and a lot of people, it was very easy to get negative, especially in the first half. Red card, stupid goals conceded, questionable lineup decisions, not enough depth. Board out, Emanalo out, whoever out. It's very easy to be negative. But I think the team's response in the second half, at least for me, is giving me lots of hope that our fight and our spirit is in the right place. That the team in 2 years ago. I'm not sure anybody will admit to it, but it was pretty obvious that they quit on Mourinho, and whether that was their fault or his fault or whoever's fault, it was a collective collapse, and we saw signs of that already happening in the first half today. Everybody pointing fingers at each other and just disorganization and discord everywhere in the team, and then came out for the second half, and whatever Conte did or whoever did, whatever we want to credit this with, excuse me. The second half display is something that we should be able to build from and hold up as a sign that just maybe it won't be another apocalyptic collapse of a title defense. Conte made a lot of mistakes. I guess. I don't know. If there was a mistake that Conte made today, I think it was not putting Morata on earlier, and possibly the insistence of staying with a 3-man defense after we went down to 10 men is possibly something that he will look back on later and wonder why he was doing that, because it's not like Burnley were really were threatening in any sort of fashion in the first 15 minutes. So just going with a 4-man defense and maybe like a 4-4-1 or a 4-3-2 instead of a 3-4-2 possibly could have been a better solution. How good was Marco? Had concerns over his fitness. That's right, good call by Amir Janwari. Since we were concerned about Marcos Alonso's fitness in the preseason, seeing as how he couldn't complete 90 minutes in any of the preseason games, but today he was motoring up and down the whole game, and had a couple decent plays despite the that early yellow that the referee making his mark on the game even before the red card, giving that early yellow to Alonso, which really affects your game, especially as a defender. You saw him have to pull out of a couple of challenges just to not risk a second yellow. But lots of good crosses, lots of good play going forward. Good crosses, one really nice shot, but of course it's Tom Heaton in the Burnley goal, so he'll pull off a couple of really nice shots. There was another good save that the keeper made on Alonso was that free kick. That's right, the free kick was really nice as well. So it's a much more positive display from Alonso than we saw basically all preseason, which kind of mirrors his performances last season. He grew stronger as the year wore on. So hopefully we don't have to wait too long, and he'll get back and continue that. That said, we certainly need more depth, especially across midfield nowadays. Really anywhere. Left wing back, right wing back, and central midfield. We need more players. We need more players, who aren't Kyle Scott or not that I have anything against old Kyle, but he's probably not ready to be the Chelsea starting midfielder against Spurs next weekend. Just a hunch there. Maybe Conte will pull out a surprise or two. And the striker, please. Well, yeah, maybe a striker, but I think Morata is showed plenty of reason why we should not be afraid to trust him to be the proper replacement for what's his face, Costa. Llorente as a second choice. Yeah, that's it's a constant. It's a name that's still being thrown out there, but I think recently Swansea said they're not going to sell Llorente, and earlier in the window, the rumors were putting his price at 30 million, which is absolutely outrageous. So and then he broke his hand, so I'm not so sure. I'm quite alright with Batshuayi as our backup center forward. He can play all the cup games he wants, and maybe some spell Morata in some of the Premier League games. But I think I was pretty happy with Morata before, and today's 30 minutes. I know it's just 30 minutes, but whatever. Looking for positives here. Today's 30 minutes makes me quite hopeful that he truly is going to be worth his price tag, as much as anybody's worth 58 to 70 million or whatever it is. And certainly, if Chelsea are out there putting in the work or whatever to get players signed, we have it's August 12th, so we have less than 3 weeks to get some players in. If the board truly are working on this, as they claim and Conte claims, they need to be concentrating on not a striker, but midfield and wing back and stuff like that. Willian is poor in transition football, says Classic Maxi. I actually think Willian is excellent in transition football. Where he's possibly not quite excellent is in the final third, when he takes a bit too long at times. And certainly today, on multiple occasions, and we possibly had something to do with being down to 10, and he wasn't about to go take on half the team. But when he gets the ball and puts his foot on the ball, and everybody just kind of stops, that's not ideal attacking play in my book. And we saw that happen with Willian multiple times today, and that's just a bit frustrating. And I know some of that is him setting up his defender to do the quick step to the right, drive to the baseline, then cross it back in. But we were not. He was not very successful at that. Is that the King of the Mountain barking? That's right. It's old King of the Mountain in the background, letting his presence be known. It's his world we're living in. Was really missing Hazard, says Abrar Ali. Yeah. It's painfully obvious at times, especially when it's only Willian out there to try to get us a win, you know. Willian's great, but slows up the pace during counterattacks, says Albert. Yeah, I think that a lot of that had to do with there being simply no support for him today. But you know, I mean, it's not like this is the first time Willian's offensive attacking contribution has been criticized. I think Willian is a fantastic support player and somebody who actually links up, you know, midfield and attack superbly, and can run the counter quite well, especially as a receiving player. But you know, yeah, I think we're going to be in trouble every time if he's literally our only threatening attacking player. So, and that a lot of that unfortunately had to do with Batshuayi being a bit of a non-entity today. It was a lot better with Morata out there, and yeah, I'm I'm hoping, you know, if Conte needed any more convincing, which he really shouldn't, you know, this should be the game that begins the Morata era, so to speak. We need more better crosses for Morata. Yes. Need somebody like not Azpilicueta on the right wing to get some crosses in, you know, vary up the attack every once in a while. You know, the high cross is not exactly the most efficient way to attack, but it does vary up the system a little bit from the usual of cutting back to the touchline, or cutting back from the touchline towards the top of the box, which seems to be our preferred method. Man of the match, definitely Craig Pawson. I completely agree. Well, Craig Pawson was a star today. He decided to make his mark. Possibly had a few pounds, you know, riding on the game. Not that I'm insinuating anything. How could I possibly insinuate anything at all like that? Questionable refereeing from first minute to the last. In fact, I still can't believe he gave a yellow card to Rudiger for that foul on whoever it was that kind of tripped over the two Chelsea defenders towards the end of the game there. So that was unfortunate for Boga today. That's right. He's probably the unluckiest player today. Old Jeremy Boga didn't really do anything bad or wrong. Well, he didn't really do anything in his first 15 minutes, but you know, it was just 15 minutes. But when Conte insisted on restoring the three-man defense, it was obvious that Boga is going to make way over Willian. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully he does indeed get more chances. I did find it a little surprising that actually Boga was the guy picked to start in place of Pedro. I would assume it would have been Charlie Musonda, who actually has a first team number. You know, Boga was playing with like 38. That's not really something that says I'm going to be part of the first team this season. That says I'm a youth player here to do a temporary job before I head out on my next loan. But you know, maybe Conte puts Boga ahead of Musonda, or maybe Musonda was just not quite up to it in terms of physical fitness just yet. Should change to the back four after first red card. Yeah, I think that's a pretty prevalent opinion. Even at the time, there was plenty of questioning as to why we insisted on restoring, going back to a three-man defense instead of just playing with four at the back, and keeping the rest of the shape as it was in like a 4-2-3 or whatever you would term that. But unfortunate. Courtois is poor. I can't believe he let the first one in. Yeah, I couldn't quite believe it either. It was a really actually a terrible shot by Sam Vokes. He completely mishit it. He might have even been deflected. The only thing I can think of is that because he mishit it, Courtois was moving the wrong way or whatever. It seemed like it took him forever to change direction, and then he just like the slow motion dive to get after the ball, and it's just like, dude, it was like right there. Yeah, it's perhaps not the best game from old Thibaut Courtois, but it would be a bit harsh to blame him completely for the game, for the loss especially. The first half is something that I mean, not necessarily forget, but it's something that we should ensure that never happens again. Because it's one thing to concede goals, and even 2 or 3 goals, and it's one thing to make mistakes in defense, but the lack of organization, just Chelsea seemed to lose their heads in that first half, and that's not something that we associate with the Conte team. You need to stay composed. Things might be going against you. The referee might be out of his mind and sending off your players left and right. You might be getting bad bounces, unlucky goals, whatever. Doesn't matter. You cannot be out there, just playing with your head cut off. You got to stay composed. And we saw a little lack of composure there in the first half, and we paid for that. In the second half, we obviously improved tremendously and put a lot of those questions to bed, hopefully. But so first half as a sign of, or an example of what we should not do ever again, and then the second half is something to build from. It's I know we lost the game. With a bit of luck, we actually bring it back to a draw, but. It's certainly better than a 3-0 loss, or a 3-1 loss, or a 3-2 losses. It's not good, but the performance itself is something that certainly gives me plenty of reason to be positive. What do I think of the disallowed goal? I think that this disallowed goal was a correct call, one of the few in the game. Morata certainly seemed at least a step offside. And I don't know, I would need to see at least another replay before I can make up my mind whether Christensen's shot was going wide or not. And just that fact that it's not obvious to me kind of makes it okay that Morata felt the need to go for that ball. He probably thought he was onside, so it doesn't really matter in terms of that. But it's unfortunate. It wasn't like a completely egregious, obvious offside with which Morata would have ruined Christensen's goal. I'm not 100% sure it was going in initially, and Morata. If Morata is our center forward, we expect goals from him, and we expect him to go for those kind of crosses and those kind of shots, even follow up the shot, whatever. So I think that's just unfortunate. It would have been perfect for either Christensen or to score or Morata to get a second, but I guess it just was not meant to be. Conte looks a bit deflated from the beginning. I'm afraid that there's the conflict between him and the board is something real. You can see it already in the press conference, the distance from the transfer talk. Says somebody whose name I'm unfortunately not going to attempt to pronounce because I think it's like Polish, and I'm very bad at Polish. But I think Conte distancing himself from the transfer thing is just very much him making a point to concentrate on the actual coaching part of the thing. He said similar things last season too. His job is literally to be the head coach, and it's his title. He's not a manager. His job is to train the players, to improve them, and get his tactics right. So And I think he's just going back to that narrative, or those lines that he likes to repeat. That said, I'm not saying that necessarily means that everything is hunky dory between manager or head coach, head coach and the board. Clearly, Conte wants more signings. The board says, through all their usual sources and Telegraph and Evening Standard and all those places, they're saying they're working very hard to get all this. And Conte himself says, the board are working, etc., etc. And yet here we are, no signings since Morata, which was almost a month ago now. So yeah, that's it's not ideal. And I could see that obviously will lead to tensions. If you promise me something, or you ask me to do something, and I promise that yes, I will do this for you, even if we have a tremendously good relationship, if I don't deliver on that promise, that's going to affect the relationship. That doesn't necessarily mean that Conte is going to work out or walk out. Sorry, or work out. That's a Freudian slip for you. Doesn't mean he's going to walk out on us. But unfortunately, he does have 2 priors of that happening. So every time is a bit of tension. Even somebody's going to bring up, it's like, oh well, he walked out on Juventus and he walked out on Bari before that for pretty similar reasons. He walked out on Bari because he got him promoted, and then the board there promised him players to compete in the top division in Italy, which didn't happen. And Conte said, "Yeah, this isn't happening. See you later." And then Juventus, very similar. He asked for players to compete in Europe. Juventus said, "Yeah, sure, we'll sign some players." And then they didn't sign any players, and Conte said, "Yeah, kind of done with this." And then he went off to coach Italy instead. So based on those, Chelsea need to deliver on that promise that they made to Conte to get those 3-4 or more players in before the end of the transfer window as soon as possible, preferably this week. Do we believe, Greg's second question, do you believe shortage on spending can have something to do with the stadium development? I don't think we necessarily have a shortage on spending. For several years now, we've been trying to do, the net spend, so to speak, without sounding like Arsenal TV. The outgoing, the idea is an idea that Chelsea needs to be self-sufficient at some point. That we can't just rely on Roman's millions to keep funding the team. So over the last few years, there's certainly been an emphasis on getting good money for players and only spending what we receive in transfer fees. That doesn't necessarily been the case. I mean, last season we spent 30 million on Conte and 30 million on David Luiz, and another 20-some million on Alonso, and another 30 million on Batshuayi. This summer, we're one of the highest spenders in the league already, second or third, I want to say. But we also are selling players for a significant amount of money. So it's we were doing this before really the stadium development began in earnest. This was a goal, a long-term goal for the club. But that said, there's still money coming in from the owner or whatever. He put in a few years ago. He put another 100 million in just for transfer fees. So it's I don't think the stadium development is affecting our transfer spending, especially because we will be looking to finance the stadium. Obviously, it's not going to be something that Abramovich shows up on the doorstep with a $500 million or pound check and say, here's your stadium money. We're going to finance that through loans or whatever from banks and investors, since that's how money's made. Debt is cheap. So, I am still fairly confident that we will, in fact, get those 3 or 4 more players in. The problem is, the players we keep getting linked to are not exactly obviously gettable signings, so to say. Like I think Drinkwater is a possibility if we throw enough money at it. I think he's gettable. His injury is a bit concerning, although hopefully maybe his injury is just something like, oh, it's an injury. Like, oh, my back. I gotta go transfer to Barcelona. But, so I think Drinkwater is certainly a possibility. I would really like to see us sign Oxlade-Chamberlain, but he's Arsenal. And that's... it's a tough goes. Oh, apparently Izzy Brown has injured himself. It's a tough day for that Loney against Manchester City. I wonder how they're doing. How our rest of our rivals are doing. Apparently it's in vogue to concede 3 goals these days if you're one of the top 6 teams. Arsenal conceded 3 to Leicester, but Arsenal ended up winning, unfortunately. Liverpool conceded 3 to Watford. They ended up drawing, and we conceded 3 and we ended up losing, so that's unfortunate. City still tied 0-0 at Brighton. Go Brighton. Nice. Most likely his injury is transfer injury, says Amir. That's right. Drinkwater is just playing the classic game. He doesn't want to actually hurt himself. Danny, stay hydrated. That's right. It's important to stay hydrated. And with our midfield completely parched, devoid of options at this point, Danny Drinkwater would be like an oasis. An oasis in our desert of midfield options. But we gotta get a move on it, man, because Spurs is coming up this weekend, and it takes seemingly forever for any transfer to be arranged by Chelsea these days. So if we're counting on somebody like Drinkwater or any other option who is not even linked with us at the moment, this better happen quick like. Otherwise, Muller. I think the obvious option right now for Conte is to play David Luiz in midfield next to Conte and just go for a complete lockdown in the middle and attack up the wings with Alonso and Moses, and then the front 3 of Pedro, Willian, and Morata. That doesn't sound bad to me. As I was saying earlier, the big concern there for me would be how the defense would be lining up. I think even if we appeal Cahill's red card, I can see it being reduced, maybe from 3 games to 2 or 1. But I don't think the FA, certainly not this early season, to make an example of these tackles. They like to do that, set a precedent and all that nonsense. I don't think even if we appeal, I don't think they would completely reduce Cahill's suspension. So I think Cahill's not going to be able to play against Spurs. So then we're looking at a back 3 of like Rudiger, Christensen, and Azpilicueta, which there's a lot of new faces there. Sort of, on their own, they're all sort of proven. But together in the Premier League, that's it would be a little concerning. So if David Luiz plays midfield, that would be my big concern, is how we line up in defense. For me, the left wing back takes priority over right wing back. We need somebody like Alonso to better link with Hazard, says Amir. Yeah, I don't know. I would have said that before today, but today's game reminded us that Alonso actually is pretty decent. Whoever we can sign first is fine. We need somebody on both sides. So, yeah. As long as we don't have to play Azpilicueta as right wing back again, because that's not his best position. And it also takes him out of the back 3, which doesn't help the back 3. So it's like a lose-lose situation. Not exactly ideal. I think Rudiger actually looked much more comfortable on the left side of the back three than he did on the right side, which he used to play left side for both Germany and Roma, so that's understandable. So yeah, there's hope. It's one game. It's a bad game. It's a loss of 3 points, or 3 points dropped that really most people would have counted on. Burnley were absolutely terrible on the road last season, but they're always a tough team, and it's not often they're going to score 3 goals. They took full advantage of their luck and of Mr. Referee there. Chelsea finishing the game 9v11, or it kind of felt like 9v12, was not ideal, but I think there's positives that we can take from, and that possibly means the sky doesn't necessarily have to fall just yet. We can. There's plenty of opportunity, plenty of hope that we'll right the ship. So I think that'll do it for us today. Next up is a rather scary game against Spurs, but it's at Wembley, so maybe it's not so bad. It's going to be next Sunday, so we have an extra day to prepare. Spurs will play tomorrow first, and they will play... if this loads for me here, I can tell you who Spurs are going to play. But they're playing at Newcastle tomorrow, early kickoff, so good luck with all that. We'll see how Spurs do up in Newcastle. Never an easy place to play, as we know all too well. So anyway, it's Spurs at Wembley next Sunday. Last time we played Spurs at Wembley, we won 4-2 in the FA Cup semi-final with a depleted or a rotated squad, so to say. So there's plenty of hope there as well. Plus it's Spurs. Come on. We got this, right? So anyway, the 17-18 season is here. It's every bit as dramatic as advertised and concerning as we feared, but I think there's plenty of hope. It's a long season. We should not have been expecting an easy time at all, but now it's going to be a little tougher. But we got Conte and we got a couple of good players, so we'll be fine, I think. We'll be fine. Just keep repeating that until we're not, or until we are. Anyway, we shall, unless something major happens midweek, like, drink water signs or Messi or whoever can help help in midfield. We'll talk to you after Spurs, and hopefully after several more Morata goals.